You're about to watch this painted coffee table look completely different. I'm stripping it down to bare wood. Oh, it's so satisfying. So I can bring in some warmth and some wood tones into this room. There has been something kind of off about the space, and I think the coloring in this coffee table just isn't working anymore. So today we're going to give it a great makeover with a little bit of stain. But first we have to get this paint off. So I grabbed all of my tools. I have two different type of paint scrapers. I have some citrus strip, a little bit that I have left over in one container, a chip brush, and most importantly, some gloves to cover up your hand from the chemicals. And I literally just squirt it on, and then you're just going to smear it all over. Make sure you get it semi-even. It's really hard because it's so thick. And you don't want it too thin. You want a nice considerable thickness on there so that it doesn't dry out and so that it penetrates the layers of paint. Then to further not let it dry out, we're going to put some plastic over the top. We want to make sure we get those edges as well so that you get everything all at once. Now we'll just put some plastic over the top and smooth out all of the bubbles so that there isn't any air getting to it. We don't want this to dry out. We want it to stay wet so that it continues to keep working on that, lifting that paint. Let me know in the comments below. Do you like stripping furniture? Do you like the process of, revealing what's underneath layers of paint? This part is exciting to me. And then we'll just come out. I just wanted to check it to see if it was ready or not. It was looking bubbly, but I just wanted to make sure. And yep, it was coming right off, taking the layer of stain that was originally on there off as well. This is a plastic paint scraper. I found that this was much better. Sometimes if the paint is kind of belligerent, I guess you could say, difficult to take off, that's when I would use that metal scraper. But this table is bamboo, and I've not worked with bamboo before. I'm finding that bamboo is actually a very hard substance, but yeah, I didn't want to take the metal scraper to it. And since the plastic one was taking it all off, it's better anyways, because the metal scraper, you have to be very careful that you're not digging up the top of the table, especially. Oh, it's so satisfying. Oh, okay. We're getting down to bare wood, that's for sure. All right, let me get the rest of it scraped off. Then we started on the bottom, and this is a little trickier because we have all of the, the bamboo reeds that are stretched around the table, as well as the bamboo legs that have all of the joint grooves, and plus trying to keep it wet. It's a little bit difficult, but I just put it on extra thick, and since this paint was coming off fairly easy, I didn't have to leave it on there for very long. And then scraping on these legs are a little more difficult as well because, you can't just scrape straight down, and it's a round surface. So you have to get completely around every single leg and completely around every single groove. But you just kind of keep working until it finally all comes off for the most part. Getting in between each one of those reeds that are stretched around the circular table is a little challenging as well and kind of tedious. But after a while, I picked up a wire brush and kind of scraped it a little bit. You want to go lightly with the wire brush because you definitely don't want to chip up and scratch your wood. But like I said, the bamboo is such a hard substance, it didn't scratch. But just be careful on pine or even some maples and things. It will gouge a little bit if you're not careful. This was the brass one. There is a plastic one you can use as well. I don't recommend a toothbrush just because the bristles are just a little bit too soft, that they get gunked up with the stripper and the paint in the first couple brush strokes, and then it's no good. And I was so diligent at painting this. I even painted the other knit underneath very thoroughly, which this was the absolute, oh, this was a killer to get off, y'all. Just all those little details and getting around the box of the drawer. Goodness gravy, every little nook and cranny was just a little bit difficult, but we're getting there, right? We're just going to keep plowing through, and hopefully I can get all the paint stripped off this afternoon. Just a quick tip. You want to make sure that you are scraping the paint off in the grain with the grain pattern, not against it, so that you don't get fibers that are coming apart or getting ruffled. It'll cause kind of a ruffly look. Now, this underneath, I didn't know which way the grain was going when I first attacked it, so I was going the wrong direction to begin with. Then I just corrected it afterwards. Now I'm also realizing this table's made out of a few different types of wood. This is going to be interesting when it comes to painting or staining, sorry. After all the paint was scraped off, I came with some 0000. I think it's quadruple zero, or the 5 zeros. I don't know which one it is. It's a very, very, very fine steel wool, and some mineral spirits to clean up all of the stripper. We want to make sure we get it all off. And as you can see, it's getting a little bit dark. I might have started a little bit too late. I've got a lot of projects going on at once right now, so it's not going to get completely done in an afternoon like I had hoped. So we'll come back the next day after I get most of this off. And I came with the wire brush one more time as well to get into all of the little grooves. Trying to remove as much of the little bits of paint and stain left over as possible. Okay, let's fast forward a few weeks. I had hoped to come back out the next day and sand, but that didn't happen. What happened was it was just before Thanksgiving when I started the project, and I started several projects at once. And we had several projects going on before Christmas as well. I made a few things for my grandkids for Christmas. So the coffee table got pushed to the back side, and I didn't get to it right away. So I'm bringing it back out now to sand off any of the remnants, because there's still things that are left onto the table. There's still bits of stain. There's still mainly just stain that has to come off, any discoloring, that sort of thing. what I'm noticing, like I said before, is that there's not only is there different types of wood, this bamboo is different shades of wood as well. And I'm finding that interesting. When I looked into it a little more about refinishing bamboo, they said there was a coating that's normally on it. And I don't know. Well, here's the beginning of the problems, y'all. You may have seen some black marks on there. I'm not sure if it's from the steel wool or if it was mold. I assumed it was mold. So what I did next, well, you're just gonna have to hang on and wait for me to tell you the whole story. But I sanded as much as I could to get it all the coloring at least as much uniform as possible. Of course, all the flat areas sanded really easy because, well, they're flat. Now, the bamboo reeds and the legs were much more difficult. And there were still sections that I wasn't getting off with the sander. So I came in with some acetone, and that really cleaned it right up. But those black marks on the top, I came in with some bleach, y'all. And that may have been a big mistake. And I'll show you what happened here in just a second. But I'm just using a scotch pad and some acetone. And I've actually looked into it. I've not done this before, but I would need to get different gloves if I do this again. But the acetone really cuts through. I mean, has anyone ever spilt nail polish remover on a wood surface? And you've seen what happened. It took it right down to bare wood, right? So it's a very powerful way to strip paint off, and especially when cleaning up those stubborn areas that just don't want to come off of the paint. But as you can see, look at the different color that the wood is underneath than is on the top. So it's actually a bamboo veneer, which would make sense because you probably can't get very thick bamboo to lay flat. So different areas of this table are going to take stain differently. All right, y'all, this was supposed to be an afternoon project. I started it the week before Thanksgiving 2025. It is now the end of January 2026, so that's what, a month and a half or so. Just saw a big hawk fly overhead, so sorry about that. Got distracted. Anyhow, so the reason being is I screwed up. I screwed up big. If I had just devoted one whole day to finish it, or a day and a half or something to finish it, I wouldn't have had so many problems. So I put the citrus strip on, I let it sit and take off the paint, but I didn't get it all off and it stained the wood. So to get the stain out, I put some bleach on it, but for some reason, I got these spots right here. Let me show you. I got these spots right here, and I don't know why. And I've tried to put more bleach on, and all it does is make it darker. So I did this spot right here. I tried some hydrogen peroxide. So that's what it looks like it's going to take it off. And hopefully even the whole thing out. But, oh, and then my sander kicked the dust because I screwed up again and I accidentally left it outside in the rain. So I'll be using this one now. So but first let me go get another layer or two because this Florida girl can't handle the cold. So let me go back inside. I decided to give the tabletop another sanding so that, I don't know, I didn't want a chemical reaction between the hydrogen peroxide and the bleach. I don't know if it would be an adverse reaction or not, but I didn't want to take any chances. So I wanted to get as much of that bleach residue off as possible. So like I said, I just went over it with another 120 grit sandpaper, also hoping to even out some areas as well, because there was not just those blotchy spots, there were other uneven areas in coloring as well. At this point, I really was just trying to lighten the wood down to at least something close to what those splotches were. I honestly, I'm still racking my brain as to how they really got there. Yes, bleach may have sat there a couple seconds longer, but why didn't they get more yellow? I don't know what happened, but they're there. We're trying to even out all the tones of the wood. So I'm putting on some peroxide because when I tested it in one little area, it did seem to lighten it quite a bit. So trying to get it everywhere except for where those splotches are so they don't get lighter. I'm just using a chip brush to get it in there. I don't know if hydrogen peroxide again is the right thing to use, but I just, like I said, I had it on hand, so I thought I would just try it out. I allowed this to dry and actually put 3 applications of the hydrogen peroxide on, and letting it dry in between before I went to the next step. Okay, so here's the plan. Me and my mouse in my pocket again. I am going to put a wash over this whole piece because it's so yellow and because we have so much unevenness. I did my best to get those splotches out on top, and I did pretty good, but it's still going to, once I put stain on it, it's going to highlight those areas. So if I do a wash, a tan wash over it first, I'm hoping it tones out the yellow, but also it'll help to kind of even all the tones out in the wood. That's my plan anyways. So what this is it's a color called French linen, which has a little bit of gray in it to counteract that yellow. But I also mixed it with drop cloth, which is a really, well, it's drop cloth color. I'm just applying it with a chip brush and then wipe it back with a shop towel. I use the shop towel because it has a very low lint factor to it. You're not going to get lots of bits and pieces, and it doesn't break down very easily when you're wiping back the very watered down paint. I've done this technique several times, especially like if I'm using pine. Pine wood is soft most of the time, and the stain wants to take just differently in different areas. There also might be some sap that's coming through. That just makes it where the knots are and things like that, and it makes the stain not come through. You could also use something like a toner that you can buy, works really well, or a water-based stain would work for this as well. But I had the paint on hand, so I figured I would just go ahead and use that to see if it was actually going to work or not. I'm working my way around this table in small sections, but continuous sections, if that makes any sense. Since this is water-based, it's going to dry very quickly. So if I had put it all over the entire table, most of it would be dry before I got to, wiping everything back. So you want to put it on larger, continuous sections, like the one section of the side of the table, and then wipe it back and then work your way to the next section. Not allowing any section to dry anywhere where you've put the paint, because that will not wipe off as easily. Okay, let's say a prayer. All of this works. This is what it's supposed to do. It has done it before. It has worked for me before, but you just never know. Wood is a natural substance that sometimes reacts differently. And what this wash will do is kind of create a barrier between the wood grain and the stain. So the stain isn't going to penetrate nearly as deep, but with that, hopefully is not going to leave unevenness because it's laying on the paint rather than fully penetrating into the wood where it could get blotchy. It's looking really good right now, but we'll have to see. The top is the hardest part because it's the largest section, I suppose, just to get this nice and even. So I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. As I was redoing this table and I was talking to my son and daughter-in-law, they were saying they needed a coffee table, and we were talking about like what kind and what size would work in their room because they just got a new sectional when they moved into their apartment. And we realized the table that I have that I was redoing was actually going to be perfect for them. Because eventually, hopefully by the end of this year, I will have a new couch or new couch set and a new, what's the word? Scenario in my room. I don't know what's the word. I'm getting tired, y'all. It's dark and I'm tired. A new arrangement of furniture. So a round coffee table really isn't going to work in this space at that point. I'll show up here. I'll put a little glimpse of what I'm talking about. This is the mood board that I have for that room. These are the couches that I think I would get two of the same, but something similar to this, a nice gold color, or possibly doing two couches or doing 4 chairs or maybe 3 chairs and a couch, or, something along those lines. But let me show you here what 2 couches would look like. I've been toying around with both. I'm thinking this is going to be like too much in this space, so I may go with just a chair. Yeah, it wouldn't be quite as much seating, but the times that our entire family is actually together is few and far between. I don't want to crowd the room up just because I want to fit everybody. We can slide some other chairs in there when those times happen. But and I had the coloring a little wrong, so I'm just changing it to gold a little bit. But so this is basically it. 2 couches, the fireplace is on this end, put the TV over the fireplace. That's controversial, I know, but some people like it, some people don't. Ours is not very high, so I think it'll work. Some sort of square or rectangular coffee table, 2 chairs at the end, and then there's the little credenza and a little chair and the gallery wall on that end. So I think that could work. So I think a more rectangular coffee table is going to work better for me. So we're doing 2 coffee tables in this makeover series. That means we have to go thrifting, right? So that make sure to catch that next video, because we will be, you and me, we're gonna head out and try to find a coffee table, which hopefully we find. Sometimes they're hard to find and at a good price. All right, we're gonna let this dry and come back to it when it's dry to be able to put the oil-based stain over the top. And then after we put the oil-based stain on, you let that dry 48 hours before we put a clear coat on it. So I'm using Minwax's special in the color Special Walnut. This is just a regular oil-based stain, and I'm applying it over top of the water-based stain, or water-based wash, which still will leave your surface porous enough for the stain to take effect. It'll just be a much lighter effect than if you did with real, on straight raw wood. And it's coming out okay. It's still quite light, but they wanted a light color. So this might work. The bottom was looking really promising. So as I was going across the top, it was going so well. But geez, let's see. Can we still see those splotches where it's much lighter? Yes, they're shining like two headlights. My heart is sinking, absolutely sinking. I have to finish with the stain on the top so that it is at least even across that section. But how am I going to get those light spots out? The frustration is it's palatable at this point. Well, y'all, this is a mess. Do you see those two splotches? They're lighter than, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm thinking maybe I'll use some gel stain. Maybe that'll work. So I let it dry overnight and came back with some, this is a gel stain from Dixpo Paint called Golden Ash. And we'll see what happens. I don't have very high hopes, that is for sure. But gel stain, you know, lays on top a little better. So I'm thinking that I possibly can kind of fake it in those spots. Possibly. I don't know. Well, there's a little bit of hope. It's not looking horrible. It's not exactly the warmth I wanted. But let's test out the bottom and see how that goes. Okay, this seems to be looking pretty good. Once I wipe it back, it's got a nice tone to it. Like I said, it's not exactly what I was looking for, but it's still staying light. We'll see. Let me keep working at it. See what happens. Well, y'all, I would have loved to have shown you a completed table, but unfortunately, I can't. I can't. In my just everything inside of me is saying this isn't right, and I'm gonna have to let it sit for a couple of days, and I'm gonna let this be a learning experience to myself, and hopefully you guys taught or learned something from it as well. If there are any recommendations that any of you might have, I am definitely open to that, because I don't, like I said, I don't exactly know which process messed it up, or if it's just the combination of all of it. So I may just try to strip this down the best I can after a couple days, or I let this stain dry for 2 days and then try to put more on top. Not really sure. This is why I don't stain a whole lot. What I have found, that if you find a piece of furniture that has a really dark stain on it, or it has a really thick stain that's semi-opaque, the wood underneath is not nicely stained. It isn't going to come out even. So I've never dealt with bamboo before, ever, and I don't know, the top is just really blotchy, and I can't in good conscience just put sealer on it and call it a day. So we're gonna let it sit here. We're gonna hit the thrift store. We're gonna find another coffee table for my living room, and I'm gonna let this sit and come back to it in a couple of days, and I will let you know in the next video what I come up with. So sorry I don't have a full reveal, but we're getting there. At least the bottom I'm okay with, but this top, I'm very disappointed. But we'll get there. We will get there. So come back to the next video. Bye bye, y'all. See you in the next one.